Long before the rise of empires, before Rome marched, before Odin rode the skies, there was a world shaped not by conquest, but by story. In the mist-laced hills and shadowed forests of ancient Europe, the Celts whispered tales that blurred the lines between gods and men, life and death, reality and dream. Their mythology wasn't carved in marble or penned in scrolls. It lived in the voice of the bard, in the song of the wind, in the heartbeat of the earth itself. These weren't just stories, they were truths, passed from elder to child, from fire to forest, encoded in memory and myth. In Celtic belief, the divine wasn't far away. The gods walked beside mortals, they laughed, loved, raged, and bled. They didn't live in unreachable heavens, they were in the rivers, the stones, the storm clouds overhead. Power was everywhere, and so were the beings who wielded it. But this world was not safe. It was wild, unpredictable, and filled with strange creatures, powerful artifacts, and gods whose favor could shift like the tide. This is the realm we now enter, a mythic landscape where heroes bargain with fate, where monsters guard sacred truths, and where objects shine with power older than kings. So light your torch, step into the mist, because in Celtic mythology, nothing is what it seems, and no story is ever just a story. The gods of the Celtic world were unlike any others. They didn't live high above in celestial palaces or sit on thrones of gold. They walked the forests, whispered through rivers, stood beside warriors in battle, and disappeared into the mists when the story was done. They were not unreachable, they were everywhere, in the storm, in the fire, in the breath of a newborn child. At the center of it all was the Dagda, the good god. But don't let the name fool you, he was not always gentle. A massive figure with a great beard and bottomless appetite, the Dagda was a father, a king, a magician, and a warrior. He wielded a club so powerful it could kill with one end and resurrect with the other. He carried a cauldron that never ran empty, a symbol of abundance and healing. To the Celts, the Dagda was life and death made flesh. Then there was Lugh, the Shining One, the many-skilled, god of sun, war, crafts, and intellect. Lugh was a master of every art, so perfect that no one skill could define him. He led the Tuatha Danann in their final stand against the Fomorians, wielding the deadly spear that never missed. Lugh's brilliance was blinding, but also unpredictable. He was the flame that warmed or consumed. But perhaps none were more feared or revered than the Morrígan, the Phantom Queen. A goddess of fate, battle, and death, she appeared as a raven on the battlefield, choosing who would live and who would fall. She could shift form, manipulate minds, and prophesy doom. Warriors feared her blessing as much as her curse. She was not evil, but she was inevitable. And then there was Brigid, goddess of poetry, healing, and the forge. A bringer of light in the darkest times, Brigid bridged the human and divine. She healed the wounded, inspired the poets, and gave strength to the blacksmith's hammer. Later, when Christianity spread across the Isles, Brigid became a saint, proof that even religion couldn't erase her. These deities didn't command obedience through fear alone. They earned devotion through complexity. They were fierce and nurturing, terrifying and beautiful, creators and destroyers. They embodied the paradox of nature itself. Celtic gods were not perfect. They were real, and in that rawness they reflected the people who worshipped them: warriors, poets, lovers, and wanderers. To follow a Celtic god was to embrace uncertainty, to walk with both light and shadow, to live in a world where the divine was never far and never fully known. In the world of Celtic mythology, monsters were never just monsters. They were omens, they were mirrors, they were lessons wrapped in shadow and flame. These creatures didn't just haunt the wild, they embodied the fears, the questions, and the unknown edges of life itself. And in the Celtic imagination, the world beyond was never far. It breathed through mists, shimmered on the surface of lakes, and sang in the silence between words. Take Balor, for example, the one-named giant of the Fomorians. His gaze alone could kill. His eye, poisoned by magic and time, was so toxic that it had to be kept shut until the moment of death. He was a tyrant, a terror, and a prophecy made flesh. It was foretold that his own grandson would slay him, and when Lugh, the shining god, hurled a spear into that deadly eye, the prophecy came true. But Balor was not just a villain, he was a symbol of old power, destructive, decaying, and doomed. Then there's the Banshee, a wailing woman draped in grief, whose cry foretells death. To some she is a curse, to others a compassionate herald. Her keening is not malevolent, it's a mourning song for what must come. The Banshee reminds us that death is not an interruption, it is part of the song. The Púca, on the other hand, is a trickster, a shapeshifter who can appear as a black horse, a rabbit, or even a man with glowing eyes. Sometimes it brings mischief, other times unexpected insight. The Púca tests humility, cleverness, and courage. To meet one on a dark road is both a warning and an invitation. And then, far out at sea, you might encounter the Selkies, seal folk who can shed their skins to walk as humans. Their stories are often filled with love, longing, and inevitable loss. A Selkie bride stolen from the sea will always hear the ocean calling her home. These tales speak of freedom, of identity, and the deep ache of exile. Unlike other mythologies where monsters are slain and forgotten, Celtic creatures remain lingering in fog, whispering in stone. They are not evil for evil's sake, they are complex, ancient forces. Sometimes protectors, sometimes destroyers, always meaningful. To encounter a Celtic monster is not to face something foreign, it's to face something buried deep inside ourselves. Our fear, our desire, In these stories, danger isn't always the enemy, sometimes it's the guide. In Celtic mythology, power did not always come from gods or warriors. Sometimes it came from the objects they carried, items not forged by ordinary hands, but born of fate, magic, and myth. These were not mere tools, they were symbols, conduits, and keys to forces greater than the mortal mind could grasp. Every artifact held a name, a purpose, and a legend etched in memory. First there was Fragarach, the Answerer. Forged by the gods and wielded by heroes, this sword was more than a weapon. It was a truth-bringer. When pointed at a man's throat, no lie could escape his lips. It cut through flesh and falsehood alike. In a world where honor meant survival, Fragarach was a blade that demanded honesty or blood. Then there was the Cauldron of the Dagda, a massive, bottomless vessel that never ran empty. It could feed armies, heal wounds, and even revive the dead. It was the wellspring of abundance and a reminder that life and nourishment were sacred. But like all great gifts in Celtic lore, it came with responsibility. The cauldron gave only to those worthy of its bounty. Next came the Spear of Lugh, a weapon so fierce it had to be stored in a vat of water to keep it from igniting the world around it. It never missed its mark. It struck with divine precision. In battle, it was the incarnation of destiny, unstoppable, blinding, burning with the will of the gods. The Stone of Fal, by contrast, did not kill, it chose. This sacred stone cried out beneath the feet of the rightful King of Ireland. It wasn't power that earned its voice, but worth. Lineage, yes, but also truth of heart. The stone did not bow to ambition, it responded only to the soul. These artifacts were part of the 4 treasures of the Tuatha De Danann, the divine race that brought knowledge, justice, and mystery to Ireland. Each item held cosmic balance. Together, they were a spiritual blueprint for sovereignty, wisdom, strength, and sustenance. But beyond their magical functions, these objects tell us something deeper. In Celtic belief, the physical world was never separate from the divine. A sword could speak truth. A cauldron could restore life. A stone could determine destiny. Magic was not spectacle, it was woven into everyday things. It lived in the tools, the land, the symbols passed down through myth. These artifacts weren't just used, they were respected, even feared. They had will, weight, and memory, and those who carried them were never the same again. In the Celtic world, to hold a magical item was not to gain power, it was to bear its burden. Celtic mythology was never meant to be confined to scrolls or carved in stone. It is alive, passed down through voices, through firelight, through generations of listening with the heart rather than the mind. It is not a rigid system of gods, monsters, and relics, but a living language of nature, memory, and meaning. Unlike myths of marble temples and thundering skies, the Celtic world is intimate, mysterious, wild. Its gods do not rule from the sky, they walk alongside mortals, make mistakes, give gifts, and demand courage. They are complex, imperfect, but powerful in their imperfection. They remind us that the divine is not far away, woven into the earth, into the wind, into the stories whispered just before sleep. Their monsters are not mindless beasts, they are messengers, warnings, reflections of fear, hope, and destiny. Some can kill, others can teach. None are meaningless. And its artifacts. Oh, those sacred objects. They are more than magical tools. They are symbols of something deeper. The sword that compels truth, the cauldron that nourishes, the stone that chooses a king, the spear that never misses. These are not just stories. They are guideposts, moral compasses, ancient blueprints for power, justice, and purpose. Even now, echoes of this myth persist. In holidays we barely recognize, in superstitions we can't explain, in symbols tattooed on our skin, in places that feel ancient even though no one remembers why. And maybe, in you, what if legends aren't just stories but echoes of truths we've forgotten? Gods, monsters, artifacts, they live on in symbols, in language, in the land itself. Now it's your turn. What Celtic stories speak to you? What relics, creatures, legends call to you? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. If you believe ancient legends still matter, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to Whispering Myths, and ring the bell for more legends resurrected from the shadows of time. Because sometimes, what was once lost is simply waiting to be remembered.